In today's video, we're going to be diving into the upcoming pattern where we have a very long period, potentially, of very cold air moving into the eastern United States. In addition to this, we are tracking a potential major snowstorm for the days following Thanksgiving. So mostly Friday, that'll be Black Friday, into Saturday is the time frame that we're watching for in the Ohio Valley, Great Lakes, Mid-Atlantic, and Northeast. The models have been showing this, and it is a little bit early for this to be happening, so I am a bit skeptical. That is why you might have noticed I, titled yesterday's video the way that I did, like, hey, potential major snowstorm, but will it happen, kind of is the way I'm approaching this, because history is a little bit against us. It is possible and it has happened, but it's not as likely this time of year. And also, it's just the models showing it at this point. The National Weather Service, as we're going to show later, and we did show yesterday, is indicating there is a chance. So they are kind of seeing this as a potential. This isn't totally nonsense, as a lot of people stated in the comment, this is total nonsense. The National Weather Service is showing this, so this is not totally out of the question, but we are going to show it in like a take it with a grain of salt fashion, like I always tend to do. Now, this cold air could last a very long time. We have something called a negative EPO, positive PNA pattern overall taking over, and all you need to know about that is it is going to keep the warm centered over the west, and that in turn, with the amount of Arctic air we have available to us right now, will continue to send the cold air into the east. We've seen this start today, so you probably walked outside, or even if you were up pretty late last night, you noticed that it suddenly got a lot colder. Right now it's about mid to low 50s here in Virginia. That is our peak wintertime high temperature. So basically what I mean by that is we are a month to 2 months ahead of schedule with a lot of this air, probably about a month and a half for some areas. We are looking at wintertime highs here in late November. So that looks to potentially continue. Let's just track the models. And as we look today, you don't have to wait until that model guidance shown snowstorm to see snow. There is some snowfall happening in these areas, even heavy snow for some areas today in the Midwest, Great Lakes, Ohio Valley, Mid-Atlantic, and even the Northeast. We're going to see a heavy pocket of snowfall set up in the Pennsylvania area later today, as we have a low offshore here. As you can see, it's a little bit of a broad low. It's kind of like long here horizontally. We see something like this as far as where the low pressure is. The lowest pressure is here, but there's a lot of low pressure along this area. So you got to look at it that there's a lot of precipitation in this area, and this is where we're going to see it kind of heavy here. We can tell, obviously, that we're already in this ridge in the west, trough in the east pattern that we have been calling for weeks. I had to deal with, again, the comments. I'm not going to talk about it too much, but I got so many comments about, it's not going to get cold. This is totally nonsense. You've been saying this for weeks, and again, I think I mentioned this in yesterday or the day before's video, but yeah, I've been mentioning it for weeks because it's been expected according to the model for weeks. We've been indicating the same exact thing for weeks, and it ended up being correct. So I don't know what people would rather see. Would they rather see me calling for cold in the east today and then warm in the east tomorrow, or would they rather consistently see me calling for the same thing? I think that the latter there is definitely better, but we shall see, obviously, I guess. By time we reach kind of the overnight hour, this is going to be 4 a.m. tonight. We see heavier snowfall setting up here throughout Kentucky, West Virginia, even Pennsylvania, New York here. Is actually going to kind of move into more southern areas in the afternoon tomorrow. This is 1 p.m., 4 p.m. here as this low is a little bit more overhead right here. And what we see is heavy snowfall setting up for Pennsylvania, West Virginia, Northern Virginia, Maryland, areas like this, New York getting involved. Also out west for the Northwest, we have this major low taking place, and we see heavy snowfall around for the west of Canada there into the Northern Cascades and the Northern Rockies as well. A very, very major storm system out there. Let's take a look at here on Saturday afternoon, and we see this low just wants to stick around here. We see a 984 with some snowfall for New England still lingering around, Vermont, New Hampshire, and Maine in particular. As things kind of slow down in the east, we actually see things kind of escalate here out west. Heavy snowfall for the Cascades here in Nevada, Rockies here, areas here in Canada, seeing heavy, heavy snowfall. That's kind of a lesson there. The west, those mountains are so cold that you don't need a fully cold pattern to see heavy snowfall out there, they could see a relatively warm pattern and still be below freezing for those mountaintop locations. So any storm that comes through is likely to bring mountainous snowfall out there. By Sunday, we actually do see some cold moving into the west. As we kind of reach a crossroads here, we see a little bit of a trough here in the west, a little bit of a ridge over the Midwest, and then another trough here over the east. They're both very soft here, but we see cooler air in the east here than these more central counterparts. And we see more cold in the west than those central counterparts. So it's more of a ridge in the middle, two troughs on both coasts. It's kind of how we see things set up sometimes. By the time we reach Monday, it's evident that another cool down could be on the way here. We're reaching the medium range here, so confidence isn't as high as obviously the one that has arrived now and is sticking around for a couple days, but confidence is rather high in this. We see that the center of the trough is somewhere about right here, and it is moving eastward generally, so we're seeing something along this as a flow. Again, a lot of storms moving along this jet stream, bringing snowfall to areas across the southwest, the northwest, even some of the central Rockies there. We do see a little bit of a very weak low pressure system here along the Ohio Valley and Great Lakes as well. So that is bringing some snowfall to these areas in the northern Great Lakes and upper Midwest. Rainfall more for the Ohio Valley here by Monday the 25th. By the time we reach Tuesday on the 26th, we see the jet stream is pretty much flattened out. A little lower in the west, a little higher over the Rockies, and then it kind of evens back out here for the eastern areas. So that is your jet stream moving straight through the central region of the United States. And it should come into as no surprise that we have a storm set up here over the central United States along that jet stream. Again, snowfall still continuing for the northwest down through the southern Rockies. Very, very interesting how long they've been just seeing this snowfall. Here's Wednesday on the 27th. And we see again this flatter jet stream is continuing. We are expecting to see more of that cold moving into the east just a bit after this. Some low pressure around here for the Four Corner states, and this is actually the feature that is going to eventually try to move up into the east and bring potentially major snowfall to some of these areas. As we keep going towards Thanksgiving here, Thanksgiving afternoon, we see this storm moves in a little quicker. This could trend in a less snowy direction if we continue to see this storm moving in earlier and earlier on the models. If they trend a little bit later with it, we will see a snowier solution. But this is the afternoon hour of Thanksgiving, 1 p.m. I'm going to move it one tick forward towards 4 because this is probably when most people are having their festivities, having dinner. And we see this low pressure center here nearby West Virginia. Snowfall for northern PA, southern New England here. Again, this GFS model does have a southeast bias, but it has gone ahead and ticked much further north here, as you can see. I still expect to see these models move around a lot on this particular system, so I'm keeping my options open, southwest, east, and north, obviously, but I definitely could see this moving in any direction at this point. But southern New England, northern PA, southern New York there, as this low becomes more of like a Miller B nor'easter, and what I mean by that is it moves offshore and then kind of up the coast as a nor'easter here, something like this, bringing the heaviest snowfall, obviously, to the northwest of that low pressure center. A typical, I'm gonna just draw a B here so we keep track here, but a typical Miller A nor'easter would move all the way up the east coast and then kind of follow the same track. So that's a Miller A down there. Miller B is this type that moves off kind of like halfway up the east coast. And we've seen a lot of major storms, major snowstorms, in fact, come from these Miller B storms. So there is no real stronger or weaker storm type. These can be really major storms, and in fact, in my experience, when I've seen Miller B nor'easters, this is the exact type of area that I would expect to see major snowfall. So this is kind of all adding up in my head, at least. We do see a ton of moisture just flowing into the storm through the southeast from the Gulf of Mexico, and this is going to aid in bringing heavier precipitation. I think the one red flag here for now is that this is a very weak low, 1001. Typically for a major snowstorm, I would like to see this in the 990s at least. Doesn't really matter too much. I mean, a stronger storm would mean likely stronger impacts, but we've talked about it in the past that is not always true. 1001 could certainly bring a major snowstorm, but the lower that pressure gets, the more confident I would be in major snowfall occurring. We can see kind of the works of this new cool down kind of working out. It starts with this warmer air mass over the west, in particular the southwest. This cold is sliding already into the central states as this trough is kind of peaking over the northern plains, upper Midwest, and this is on the move eastward overall. So as we reach the high temperatures of Friday, this will be the afternoon, again, Black Friday, we see a true positive PNA really taking hold here along the west. And this trough just continues to slip further and further eastward. Now we're seeing our jet stream with a trough peaked kind of over these areas here. This is the peak of it, and plenty of very, very cold areas located over the northeast and mid-Atlantic by this point. Again, if the storm was moving through right now on this frame, we would see a track much more like this, and your snowfall would be, you know, maybe a little bit more expansive as there's a lot more cold to work with. Is this really realistic? Historically speaking, this would be a rare event if we saw something like what's on screen right here. So I wouldn't bet on it, I guess is what I would say. Let's move this towards Saturday, and this is going to be another very cold day, Saturday the 30th, and we see this positive PNA is kind of continuing to mature. We see it really expansive over the west, and now the peak of your trough is likely truly over the east by this point. So maybe Saturday is the ideal peak for this. Very, very deep cool down, and this would in fact be colder than our current cool down, so this would bring us even further below normal. Here is Sunday the 1st, and we get a little bit of a low in the middle of this cold, and this brings kind of widespread snowfall showers throughout the kind of Midwest areas, Great Lakes, Ohio Valley, some of the Mid-Atlantic in here as well. We're seeing plenty of areas dealing with that snowfall from this, and I want to see how this kind of progresses. And look, I mean, maybe the chance for another Miller B nor'easter as this kind of transfers its energy offshore. But the thing is this one's a lot further offshore. Maybe some snowfall threats along the immediate coast if this did occur. But I know I'm like a broken record. I have to remind you, southeast bias here on this GFS model is a well-known thing. And, you know, very well this low could be more tucked along the coast, bringing the more interior areas snowfall, which is a lot more realistic for this time of year. Anything's possible, anything goes. Again, we developed some heavy snowfall, especially in like southeast Massachusetts, so this would be a pretty exclusive coastal storm. Not impossible. I definitely could see this coming more northwest, though, from what this is currently showing. That cold lasts through Monday. As you can see, it's still located around Tuesday. We've warmed a little bit, but still clearly a trough in the east, ridge in the west, and we kind of just reinforce that as we move towards Wednesday the 4th, Thursday the 5th, and then finally we get a little bit of a break here Friday into Saturday the 7th here, where we get a little bit of a warm-up as we have a major low near the upper peninsula of Michigan, warm front here, so that is expanding the warm east or northward over the east. But clearly there's a very intense cold front here and a huge Arctic blast on the way again for the now maybe second week of December. We do still continue to see this positive PNA, and as long as this is in place, this cold is not going to head west. It could stay up north and just not move down, but if it's going to move down, it's going to slide over that into the east, and that's why we're continuing to see this model just putting more and more cooldown straight into the east. That is unfortunately the end of the model run. We're on a huge kind of like turning the page here. I mean, this is just a crazy place to end. Kind of a nail biter, but it's clear to me that this would, over the coming days after this point, bring cold air into the east. Likely, you know, I don't know, but there would be some snowfall in some areas likely as well. Sometimes with these types of scenarios, you'll see a secondary low set up to the south. And if we do get the cold in the more eastern areas, it could try to move along a similar storm track. A little far-fetched, though. Sometimes that doesn't happen. And honestly, most times it doesn't. So, yeah. Here's the European model, and I just want to show where we have agreement. Again, snowfall for the day today. We see that throughout portions of Pennsylvania, New York, West Virginia. It's a little bit more I would say reserved with it, which is probably a better approach. So more of these higher elevation areas, maybe valleys, seeing more rainfall, that could definitely be a factor. And then we honestly see everything kind of turn to rain mostly before we get some Adirondack, Green Mountain, White Mountain, and northern Maine snowfall. Then we get this second cool down moving in for kind of like the mid to late week. Here's that snowstorm. And again, this one, the problem is that we have some low pressure stuck back here, some up here, and we just keep a weaker storm. We don't see it really come together because it's so spread out. But we do see this first initial one bring some snowfall to New York and Pennsylvania. It's a lot more marginal. So let's watch this. This is for Thanksgiving, again, like the European or the GFS model showed. And then we get this second one, and that one does move up and it does intensify over the mid-Atlantic. But we're just not dealing with enough cold air in yet. But New England would cash in likely on some snowfall from this if it did occur. And we have an Arctic blast moving in, just like the GFS model showed, maybe even more intense on this particular model. And look at the lakes, by the way. Tons of lake effect snowfall as a result of this for the days following Thanksgiving, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, moving towards the 1st of December on this model. Again, look at this. This is classic. Positive PNA really taking hold here. And then we see this trough just really digging into the east. This is a classic major cooldown look in the east. As we keep going, we see this kind of just continue. Maybe a little bit of a like almost southern slider type storm moves down as a clipper. Just like this, we get light snowfall, very quick amounts of snowfall for these areas. And then it wants to kind of move offshore. In these scenarios, sometimes that can intensify off the coast. I should urge you to take this with a grain of salt. This is very far out, but that's the type of cold we're dealing with. It brings the potential of that type of stuff. So here's Monday the 2nd, Tuesday the 3rd, Wednesday the 4th, Thursday the 5th, Friday the 6th. Tell me when the warm-up is in the east on these models. Maybe the days following this, honestly, from where we're seeing things moving, but from basically Thanksgiving onward, it doesn't really relieve. That warm-up doesn't come in between. So this would be long-term cold on this European model. Also, for those of you that really pay attention, you might note that the European model now goes out to 360 hours, similarly to the GFS model, whereas it used to just go to hours 240. So now we do kind of get a 15-day outlook from the European model. Huge upgrade there, because for anything more long range, we've had to always turn to the GFS model or other models. And now that the European model is in that family of longer range models, it is going to give us, some better outlooks a little further into the future. Pretty cool stuff. GFS model, total precipitation, we see pretty large amounts over the Northwest. Again, this is going to show up as below average, but it is still a decent amount. We do see likely an above average amount for a lot of areas in this swath, as we see many storms move up through here. So let's take a look at the anomalies. And again, a little bit below normal for Washington and Oregon, but they're going to be fine. Northern California, though, gets above average amounts, which is good. We do see this swath in here where these storms move through, where there's a clear swath of above average. It's not as widespread as I'd like to see, but some areas with much needed relief from their droughts are going to see some of that, which is good news. Here's the total snowfall on the GFS model. We see a lot for the Sierra Nevada mountains, a bit for the Cascades, a bit for the Rockies, but a little underwhelming in those two mountain ranges. Upper Midwest, Northern Plains, Ohio Valley, Mid-Atlantic, Northeast, we are seeing some of our first snowfall for a lot of areas in these spots. And I'm just going to go through the colors. Grays is a dusting, if anything. Blues are 2 to 6 inches. Purples are 6 to 10. Pinks are 10 to 20. Your pastel blues are 20 to 30. And your pastel pinks are even 30 inches plus, like we see for northeastern Minnesota, I should say. And then also the Catskills of New York. They're the very high elevation regions. Now, this isn't the accumulated snowfall. This is just what falls out of the sky. We will look at an accumulated snowfall map in a minute, but here is the European model's outlook. It's pretty similar out west, but as far as the east, we see a little bit less expansive here, but still some of this Appalachian mountain range seeing plenty. The lakes obviously putting out a lot of lake effect snowfall. That's what all of this is lake effect snow. We can tell because of the direction and basically what we saw on the model. But you could just tell there's tons of bands of lake effect snowfall setting up for these areas. Really, really intense. And then we see a lot of this snowfall coming from our couple of coastal storms. So again, a lot of these areas may be seeing 10 inches, 15 inches. Lake effect could bring a lot more, as you guys know. So very interesting stuff. Here, we're going to take a look at it. The accumulated snowfall depth is a lot more marginal. So let me see, is this zoomed in? Yes, it is. So here we go. This is the zoomed in look, and we're looking again, like the map showed, 20, 25 inches in a lot of spots. That's why I said 10 to 15, because when we look at West Virginia into Pennsylvania, it's 10 to 15 accumulated. I think the lakes will do better than that if we see lake effect events. So this does have flaws, but the Catskills, Adirondacks, 10 to 15. Green Mountains, perhaps 10 to 12, I would say is what I'm seeing here. White Mountains, 10 to 15. And then interior, far in daily emojis, let's go. Interior Maine here, we're seeing like 10, 12 inches up there as well. So that is all coming due to a little bit of a medium to long range snowstorm. We should see changes with this, as I mentioned, either north, south, east, or west, warmer, colder, later, earlier. There's a lot that can change, so I want to urge you, don't take any of this as gospel. I do expect tons of shifts, and we're going to track it every day with you guys, so be sure to stay tuned. Here's where the Climate Prediction Center from the National Weather Service is indicating a chance of heavy snowfall between the 28th and 30th of November. Again, from Indiana, Ohio, Pennsylvania, New York, Vermont, New Hampshire, Maine, bits of like the Berkshires and Massachusetts there. This is a very interior look, and I mentioned it yesterday. I think that this is a wise outlook. If I was to draw an actual forecast for people without breaking it down, this is a wise outlook because this is a more historically known area to see snowfall this early in the season. And these models, especially the GFS, tend to trend to the northwest away from the southeast bias over time, and that would place it in this area likely. Now, it could be south of this, could be east of this, could be later than this, could be earlier. Like I mentioned, things can change drastically, but they are indicating a chance of heavy snowfall. So this isn't some sort of, again, it's nonsense. This is something that the professionals at the National Weather Service are indicating there's a chance of. So that is what we're talking about. Temperature pattern. Again, it looks very cold. We're seeing this current cool down here. On the GFS model, we do get a little bit of a warm up here as we approach Monday, Tuesday, but we get cold pretty much immediately back for Wednesday there. A little bit of a warm up in the southeast for Friday before moving into a much cooler pattern for Friday, Saturday, Sunday. We get kind of a resurgence of this. And again, this is drastic. The blues are 1 to 10 degrees below normal. Greens are 10 to 15. Those purplish blues in there are 15 to 25 degrees below normal, and then the magentas would be 25 to 35 or more degrees below normal. Huge cool down here potentially for the 1st, 2nd, 3rd of December. And then we get another one for like the 5th, 6th, 7th, and then look, we kind of get a warm up again, maybe a 1 or 2 day warm up here, but we still have this very, very sturdy positive PNA here, and we have cold intruding. So this is likely another cool down that would be moving into the east. So yeah, really looking like a cold look moving forward. Here's the European model. Looks a little cooler even at points. Here's this first initial cool down. We get that little bit of a warm up. Here comes that next cool down. Boom. And we get a major look here as well, just like the GFS model. Here's Sunday the 1st. This is Monday the 2nd. Tuesday the 3rd. Wednesday the 4th, Thursday the 5th, and it just kind of continues. Finally, we're seeing this warm kind of spread to the central states on this model, so we'll have to see if the GFS model or European model are correct at that like day 13, 14, 15 mark, but the odds of either of them really having a great idea at that point is relatively low. Anyway, there's obviously a lot of developments that we're going to need to track here as we're kind of shifting gears towards a medium to long range outlook with a lot of this stuff. So be sure to tune in with us daily. We do upload every single day, so be sure to subscribe. You can even hit that bell icon for daily notifications when we upload so you never miss one. Be sure to like the video if you did enjoy it. Leave a comment down below, and I'll see you guys in the next video.